Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, we're back in the office. Kind of nice to be back home for a little while, but this week we had a lot of really fascinating news. We had a couple of thought-provoking columns. One of yours was to talk about how the Dirty Dozen kind of fizzled. And I kind of have to agree with you because I can remember, like, I don't know, was it 12 or 13 years ago? I was living in Austin. It came out. I was all like pumped, and I went and tried to buy everything because I had seen it on the Today Show, and the people on the Today Show were just like, super into how bad conventional produce is for you. And it seems like we're not seeing any of that message anymore, or very little of it.
Well, even the environmental working group says that's not the message. Their whole point is to get people to switch to organic. But they absolutely, if they had as much power as they used to, it suppresses conventional and organic consumption from consumers. So I looked through the media and did my best to figure out how it was covered. And then I also contacted Teresa Thorne, who runs the AFF, the Alliance for Food and Farming. And we compared notes and tried to see who covered it. And she said that their analysis showed it is about the same as last year, which would make it the second lowest media coverage since they've started doing it over 20 years ago. And the lowest was 2020. And if you recall, it came out that spring. And I actually looked up a column you wrote in spring of 2020, making fun of how tone deaf the EWG was coming out with this at the start of a pandemic when no one really knew what was going to happen. And I mean, it was life-changing whether or not you got it or not. And EWG is trying to scare people away from conventional produce. So it was totally tone deaf. And I think that's part of the reason why it remains tone deaf, is people have other things to worry about. That's not on the top of the list. And it's the more we look into it, the more we realize it's junk science anyway. So I have links in there. So if people want to see how various places covered it, a lot of people did contact the Alliance for Food and Farming for balance. And that's something that they've worked on for many years to be available for balance. Most of them did. CNN is one of the few that didn't. One of my favorite quotes in there was in that CNN story where it said, buying food that is purchased directly from a local farmer can reduce the risk of pesticide exposure. Experts say.
What expert? Where did they talk to about that?
More than one expert said it, local produce has less pesticides. So I guess that's one of the silliest things I've ever heard, because everything's local to someone.
Anyone in the produce industry is going to just, like, their eyes will roll so far back in their head, they're not going to come back down, because there are so many variables to how much you have to apply crop protectant, I guess is the word that they use now, depending on where you are. Why do you think apples grow in the desert? It's because they don't have to add as much stuff to them to make them grow well out there. And so there's less of that stuff used. I mean, if you grow an apple in somewhere on the East Coast, they have to use different stuff. Yeah, we know how that we feel about that. We're like 2 steps above an armchair expert on that.
Organics uses pesticides anyway. They don't use synthetic pesticides.
Right. And
so even that premise is silly. I mean, there's lots of things that are natural that can kill you.
And some of the organic farmers that I know, that I personally know, say maybe U-Pick's not a great idea for an organic farm because they have sprayed more recently than a conventional farm, which maybe has to spray only like 2 or 3 times a season. The organic folks have to come in with their approved protectants and spray more often because they just aren't as powerful. There are a lot of extremely compelling reasons to eat organic if that is your family's choice, but we have shown over and over and over again, this list does nothing but scare people for no good reason. And it seems like maybe perhaps that message is getting through to media, at least, which is a lot of the problem sometimes.
Yeah, and one of the things Teresa pointed out is she could not find any television coverage of the list.
Yes, I mean, not a lot of people are watching TV anymore. Maybe she should wade into TikTok to see what those wackos are saying about it, because yeah, there's some dudes on TikTok mansplaining the produce department, telling you kale is bad for you.
Not bad for you, just tastes bad.
Just your opinion, man. I like kale.
That is my opinion.
Speaking of another term that kind of fits right into that dirty way of describing food, Richard Smoley, our contributing editor for Produce Blueprints, has been writing some really fascinating articles lately. And one of them this week was about food swamps, and how food swamps are bad for consumers, and that they contribute to obesity rates. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term, we talk about food deserts. Food deserts are where people don't have access to food within, I think, a mile or 2 miles. And surprisingly, a lot of rural America is actually the biggest food desert, and not just inner city. Inner city places are more likely to be a food swamp, where there is a lot of selection for food, but none of it is nutritious, or it all has a lot of salt, sugar, fat. The holy or unholy trinity of fast foods.
Well, Richard's main point was he used a study that looked at Minneapolis, and they focused specifically on one street. I believe it's in northeast or northwest Minneapolis, West Broadway. It's a poorer part of town, and it's a street with a ton of fast food places, and it's considered a classic food swamp. I looked up that street myself and happened to find a Cub Foods on it. So it doesn't fit the exact definition of a food swamp. And that, so he has a couple main points. Food swamps are a problem. They're a problem more for minority neighborhoods. And the produce industry has an opportunity, a bigger opportunity than they probably think when it comes to fast food. There is a natural disinclination to eat healthy at fast food, but you can do it. And
Yeah.
One of my skepticisms of these is, I mean, they did this study telling me it was food swamp, and I looked into it myself and found out that there's Cub's Food there, and there's a dollar store there. I don't know if they have produce there, but some of them did. And there's some other small boutique market that has fresh meat and produce in it. So a lot of times I'm not going to go so far as to victim shame of unhealthy eating, but we live in a country with amazing food choices, and there is a big problem with people making unhealthy food choices.
Right. I also think that there is a lot of opportunity for especially fast food. I have sat through so many sessions at especially shows like South by Southwest with very idealistic people trying to change this and trying to make greater access to healthy foods at a fast food location. I can recall a salad place that was in Compton, but trying to not make a $14 salad, but make an $8 salad instead, something that is a little more cost efficient. I know cost is definitely a factor in some of these, but if you go, I'm going to pick on them because they're here in town, and it's the state burger of Texas, the Whataburger. If you go to Whataburger, I don't think you can get a salad. I don't even know of a salad, because why would anyone go to Whataburger for a salad when they have the world's best patty melt? It's really
I would
tough.
disagree with you there. I've been to that place, and I remember there being salads. And if
Really?
you want to go to fast food and do half a plate, you can do it. And I'm not counting French fries. You can easily, almost every place. I don't eat there very much. I work at home, so I don't eat lunch out very often. But it is not that hard to pick a salad or apple slices or something that gets you part of the way to, or close to, what that half a plate is. It's not.
I mean, in my family, we end up eating out a lot because we've got sports going on and we're busy and whatever, and that's everyone's excuse. But I mean, I got multi-sport athlete over here who we go to Cane's or something like that, and I make him get the smaller meal, and he's like, I'm still hungry. You know what? We got apples at home. So that's the way we solve that, is that we're going home from a sporting event, and yeah, you can have a little bit from the fast food place, but if you are still hungry when that's over, we're going to go home and eat the food we have at home. So we have compromised for that. But one of my favorite restaurants is one that is growing in Austin that I actually love. It's called Mad Greens, and they have amazing bowls and salads and obviously greens. And I wish there were more options like that in a lot of these food deserts, but we all have to sit back and go, the whole, if there was demand, there would be more grocery stores. And it sounds terrible to say, but there are organizations that are doing a lot of work to try to remedy that in some of these areas, like Dollar General, like you mentioned. Dollar General is adding produce, and I was super skeptical at first, but if you see some of the produce displays that these guys are building, there's a whole lot of work going into those, a whole lot of pride going into those. So one can hope that Dollar General will also allocate more labor hours as they add more produce to their stores to try to alleviate some of the problems that they're having with out of stocks and whatever. But there are a lot of people working on this situation. I wish that there were more healthier options at fast food. But when you're at the end of the day, if you're there, do you want a patty melt or do you want a salad? I mean,
You can have both.
you can have both.
We should also mention the school nutrition push, which is to get healthier foods in schools. And so kids are exposed to it throughout their school age years. And I would hope that starts to become a habit for them, that they crave that. And it is for my kids. And fruits and vegetables have always been part of their life. We don't have a meal that doesn't have them.
Right. I mean, in our family,
like I wrote about in my PBH coverage, it's creating produce habits are really important. And once you have it, you can't get rid of it. If I know I'm going someplace that they're not going to have it, I'll bring an apple or orange in my bag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we've conditioned our kids, and also we work in produce. So we have our produce blinders on, like that is how we live. But for the general public out there, it can be very challenging. And of course, my husband is listening to us and just fact checked me and said there are for sure salads at Whataburger, and maybe the next time I go there, I'll check. But I'm sure that it can be very frustrating. We got one more topic that I really wanted to talk about, and that is something that could be skimmed over if you just read the headlines. But Publix and Instacart are doing 15-minute grocery, but it's not like the 15-minute grocery that you're thinking of. It is fulfilled by a collaboration that Publix has called Carrot Warehouses, and Publix and Instacart. And this is part of Instacart's new platform that they announced a couple of months ago. And this, I think, and a lot of other industry, pontificators are saying that this could be Instacart's moving into owning the whole grocery part of it and not being a partner with it. So it's a micro fulfillment warehouses that they're fulfilling these 15-minute orders out of. This could have huge implications for retail. To think about Instacart launched 2014, 2013, something like that, maybe 2012, 10 years ago. And since then, they have partnered with tens of thousands of retailers and stores. And the other part of that they have from that is they have all the data from all of those orders and all of those customers and all of those habits, all of that pricing structure, all of that. They already own all of that. And the only thing they don't own is their own stuff. And this is going into their own stuff. So huge implications of, we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, they claim that they're going to have thousands of items in what they call a nano fulfillment center, specifically mentioning fresh produce, dairy, meat. So that's a big jump, and that is a big difference if they can do that and also expand that. It's just in Miami right now, but that's something that's different than some of the bicycle 15-minute delivery people, which is not scalable to outside of a dense metro area. This could be a lot less dense with, any reasonably dense city, this I think would work for.
Every time you see every time you see Instacart partner with something like a 7-Eleven or something like a convenience store, that is where I go. They're looking at nano grocery or whatever they're calling it. Nano grocery is now the new micro grocery, whatever. All of these bike guys had to learn how to do grocery and had to learn how to do order fulfillment and had to learn all the widgets and gizmos and this brand new Wild West kind of stuff. Instacart already knows all of that. And all they've got to do is just get some space to operate their little nano fulfillment centers out of. So I think that could be a huge step for them. And so it's definitely something to watch. So really exciting times in online grocery. All right, I think that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.
If you stuck around this long, then thank you.
Yes, thank you. Here's your obligatory, hey, Chewy.
Oh, he kept nice and quiet this time.
He did. There was like a FedEx guy out there earlier and he didn't say anything, which was like, good boy.